I think it was in 1965 that I first heard about the little railways on the Isle of Man in an article in Railway Modeller. It has taken me over 60 years to get there, but I have now visited them. There's rather less track mileage than there once was, but it's still well worth a visit. And we were able to tick off a few other items from our to-do list on this trip. We went via the Midland Hotel at Morecambe, an Art Deco icon, as they call them these days, a good example of Art Deco architecture, and we thought it would be good to stay there. We did that on the way. We also stayed with some friends in Warrington, and my wife visited another friend in Leeds on the way back. So we had a bit of a round tour. It involved crossing the Pennines between Sheffield and Manchester to get there. It didn't have to involve that, but we thought that that would be a good thing to do because we just don't know that route, and we knew it would be rather good to do. It also involved travelling between Lancaster and Leeds on the way back, another route we don't really know. And so we've ticked off quite a few things on this trip, and this is how it went. We had prepared a rather splendid picnic lunch to have on the train on the way there. And there is trolley catering on the train, but we weren't sure whether or not it would actually materialise, and it's a long way to go, so we made sure we had something with us. We did buy our coffee from the trolley when it came by to round off the meal. Altogether, it was a splendid journey. The quick way from our home in Stamford to our first call at Warrington is straight across to Birmingham and change there to go up the West Coast main line to Warrington Bank Quay. But we wanted to use the scenic route via the Transpennine route between Sheffield and Manchester, and then go across to Warrington Central where our friends met us. From there, after staying with them, we went up to Morecambe for a couple of nights and did a little bit of tourism around the Lancaster area before crossing over to the Isle of Man, where we joined a Great Rail Journeys tour of the Isle of Man, visiting lots of interesting places and using all of the great little railways on the Isle of Man. When it was time to return, we took the ferry back and then by train went across to Leeds, and having spent some time with a friend in Leeds, then travelled home straight down the East Coast main line to Peterborough and home to Stamford. Our friends met us by car from Warrington Central Station, and we spent the weekend with them before moving on from Warrington Bank Quay Station for the trains via Lancaster to Morecambe. We checked into the Midland Hotel and went up to see our room, which was really quite amazing. All the features were hidden behind these wooden panels. Here is the TV, the coffee making facilities, the bins and all kinds of things. To the right hand end of the range was the wardrobe, and to the left the bathroom, where the WC was hidden behind a similar panel, which also acted as the door. If the door weren't closed, the WC wasn't there. We went for a walk in the evening, enjoyed the view across to Cumbria, and then we had some wonderful fish and chips in a cafe along the seafront. On the Tuesday morning, after breakfast at the hotel, we took a bus to Lancaster and spent some time there, including seeing this locomotive which took us to the Lake District last year. And then we went to Carnforth. I'd always wanted to visit this station where Brief Encounter was filmed, and we had our lunch there in the famous refreshment room. We then took a brief trip to Grange-over-Sands, which we'd visited years ago and wanted to see again. It's a beautiful station at Grange, and there are some lovely gardens to walk through. We didn't stay long, and we soon caught the train back to Lancaster and then home to Morecambe for dinner after cocktails at the hotel. After breakfast the next morning, we stored our luggage and went off around Morecambe just to look at one or two of the shops. They're not in the town centre anymore, they're over on a trading estate near the station. And then we went to catch the boat train to go and get the Manxman ferry across to Douglas. This was the start of our Great Rail Journeys holiday, and we would meet the tour manager at Haysham Port before boarding the ferry. This is probably not quite what you think of as a boat train, but that's exactly what it was. Not quite like the Golden Arrow, though.
I think it normally takes this long. Do you think it...
Once we boarded the Manxman, we managed to get seats right at the front, looking out over the front of the ship as it crossed the Irish Sea on its way to Douglas Harbour. We could explore the ship. There's quite a lot to see. There's a bar and a restaurant and a cafeteria and this shop. There's a dedicated area for families with young children and also for people with pets.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll shortly be arriving on our berth, and we ask you to please remain in the passenger lounges until you are called to disembark. Upon disembarkation, please ensure you take all your personal belongings with you. Passengers are reminded that smoking is strictly prohibited until clear of the terminal building. Would any passengers who occupy cabins during this crossing, please ensure their cabin key cards are left in the cabin or returned to the information desk before disembarking the vessel.
Or the lemon squeezer.
Lemon squeeze. Yes,
Lemon
it is,
squeezer.
isn't
That's
it?
what the four offices are. There are quite a few churches in there.
As we arrived in Douglas after our usual dinner time, we went straight into the dining room for dinner before going up to our room to settle in for our first night on the Isle of Man. On the Thursday morning, the whole Great Rail Journeys party walked down to Douglas Station on the Isle of Man Steam Railway for our first railway trip on the island. This once extensive railway system now runs only between Douglas and Port Erin via Castletown, and we were going all the way through to Port Erin, where we would visit a railway museum and then be taken on by road coach to the Sound, where we may be able to see some seals, and on a good day would be able to see the Cathedral of Man, an island just up the coast, and even across the sea to Northern Ireland and the mountains of Morecambe, but we never got to see those. The weather was far too misty and cloudy for that. But the rail trip was fun. A visit to the old House of Keys was included in the itinerary. We weren't allowed to take photographs inside, so you can't see that, but we took part in a mock debate about the increase of democracy and the moving of the capital from Castletown to Douglas. Castle Rushen, which gives Castletown its name, is probably the best preserved medieval castle in all of the British Isles. It's well worth a visit. Another day, another railway. We took a long walk along the seafront in the morning after breakfast and caught a tram on the Manx electric railway through to Laxey, and at Laxey we were to change to the Snaefell mountain railway, taking us up to the highest peak on the island, and you were supposed to get some good views from up there on a good day. Unfortunately, it wasn't a good day. As you can see, already it's misty down here, and it was even mistier up there. But still, it was a fun ride, and it's nice to have changed trains in Laxey and seen something of that place on the way up. On the way down, we would spend some time in Laxey, exploring the famous big water wheel and generally looking around the village before catching the tram back to Douglas. And then, rather than walking along the seafront back to our hotel, we could get the horse tram part of the way. It used to go all the way to the harbour, but it no longer does, and there is a hope it will be extended again one day and reach the harbour, in which case we would have been able to ride all the way back to our hotel. Our Great Rail Journeys holiday included a pass for public transport all over the island, including all the heritage railways, and another pass for all the museums and attractions. So once we were there, everything we did cost us nothing extra. Thank you very much.
Trade slipper.
On a clear day, you can see quite a lot from here. This was not a clear day. Back down at Laxey, we had an ice cream here before moving on to explore the great wheel, the Lady Isabella. There is no coal on the island, and so water power was used to power a lot of its industry rather than import so much from Britain. and this wheel was designed to pump the water out of the mines. Now, the mines were mining metal ores and were quite a big industry here, but they had to be kept pumped clear of water. This hugely powerful water wheel was the plant that provided the power for the pumping. We set off by coach the next morning, doing part of the Isle of Man TT circuit with a commentary from someone who has frequently raced in the TT races. It took us to St John's, where we were able to visit the Tynwalds Church, where all the members of the House of Keys have a reserved stall. And then we went on in the coach to Peel, still following the TT circuit, and had some time there before the coach took us on to Ramsey to travel back to Douglas via the entire length of the Manx Electric Railway. Sunday morning we attended worship at St Matthew's Church in Douglas before taking a bus all the way up to Ramsey to see the Grove Museum. We had open minds about whether we would return by bus or would catch the Manx Electric Railway again. It depended how the timing worked out. In the event, we did the journey both ways by bus.
Let's just walk, guys. Let's chill.